Beautiful. So, moving on to our next speaker, I suppose we have Rachel Sherlock. Rachel is a Catholic writer, literary enthusiast, and host of Risking Enchantment. It's a podcast on art, literature, and culture through a Catholic perspective. And we're really, really happy to have you here today, Rachel. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a really amazing event. I'm just going to share my screen because, as you guys mentioned, I talk about Catholic art and beauty and culture and all of those things. And so, what is that without a few pictures? And I will present. So today I just wanted to speak a little bit about Marian devotions and how art draws us into prayer. And I think in all ways, art and beauty draws us closer to God and enriches our prayer life and shows us the true nature of God. And I think this is particularly true of Marian devotions and, you know, just entering into prayer to Our Lady and helping us to come to understand her. So as we've been speaking a lot about Marian devotions and devotions in general already this evening, I think I can pretty much expect everyone listening knows what a Marian devotion is, but I think it's also good to just cover the ground again and make sure that nobody kind of hears something and just takes it for granted and then is left wondering, wait, what is that? I never actually got to grips with that. So a Marian devotion is essentially just the way that we show devotion to Our Lady. And primarily that's just in the prayers that we say. We've already said the rosary this evening. That's a wonderful Marian devotion. It could be the Angelus every day. It could be a consecration to Our Lady. All of these prayers are part of the way that we show devotion to Our Lady. But within that, we can have particular traditions and traditions of art and traditions of prayer around various aspects of Our Lady, some of her titles, her characteristics, her attributes. And I think, you know, I have some friends who didn't really know anything about the faith when they came into it. And they were sort of like, why does she have so many names? Is this not just the one person? Are we not just praying to one person all the time? Why does she have about 1,000 names? And the way that I explained it to them is that if there's someone in history that you feel really passionate about, you might read biographies of them. And if they have a whole range of things, let's say it's, I don't know, someone like Padraig Pearse, you could read about them as a revolutionary, you could read about them as a teacher, you could read about them as a poet or their young life. And so when we're praying to these different titles of Our Lady, we're exploring and trying to come to understand particular truths about her, and in knowing that, come closer to her, and through that to God. And so I've kind of broken down some of the different titles just in case people want to develop they're kind of curious about the different devotions that there are to Our Lady. Like I said, there are all the prayers, but within that we have titles that are attributed to certain events in Our Lady's life, whether it's the Assumption of Our Lady. I was born on the Assumption of Our Lady, so she's my patron, she's my favorite. And yeah, so obviously this is just an event within the life of Our Lady on earth. We also have ones which are to do with apparitions. So we have Our Lady of Knock, Our Lady of Lourdes, all around the world, all of the different apparitions. We have titles which are associated with certain characteristics of hers, such as Our Lady of Mercy. She's also known as Our Lady Comfort of the Afflicted. And then even within that, we have other titles that are slightly more poetic or artistic. We have Our Lady Undoer of Knots, Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. And so these are just ways that we come to understand the true nature of Our Lady. And so for the rest of this talk, I'm just actually going to pull out, I think, about 3 of my favorite traditions and devotions to Our Lady, and hopefully this will inspire others, maybe in this particular devotion or maybe in another, but just to show both how developing devotions to Our Lady and particular titles of Our Lady, and also for dwelling on particular images of Our Lady, are really beneficial to our prayer life. I was reflecting on this recently and how when Christ gave Our Lady to St. John, and by extension to the rest of the world, he said, "Behold your mother." And in a very natural way, this was the moment she officially became the mother of all of us. And so it is now you can see this woman as your mother. And that's very straightforward. But there's also, as far as I can see, an instruction in that, which is to behold your mother, see her, gaze on her, look at her, meditate on her. And so that's a huge part of these devotions for me. And rather fittingly, the first devotion I wanted to talk about was Mary at the foot of the cross, at that moment in Our Lady of Sorrows. I think we've had the sorrowful mysteries already this evening. We know about that journey of sorrow that Christ goes on, and that Our Lady was right there with him throughout it all. And I think it's so important at this time, particularly I think it's been a difficult year for a lot of people, to remember that even though Our Lady is immaculate and even though she never sinned, it doesn't mean that she is removed from our pain in any way. In fact, the opposite. She is right in the center of all of it. And she is right there gazing at our Lord on the cross in his suffering. And she stands right beside us. She never leaves us in our suffering. So this is a beautiful image that I love. It's called Maria by Jan Stuyka. And I just love the expression on her face of deep knowing and concern and love. And yeah, I have a quote here from a priest and an author called Robert Hugh Benson, and he delves into why this title and this devotion of Our Lady is so important. And I'll just bring up this image as I'm reading it out. He says, let me find it here. He says, "If Mary had been given us as our mother in Bethlehem, if she had wrapped herself in her unique joy, if she had been to us a figure of incarnate bliss, then when the horror of darkness fell upon us, we too should have crept away from even her to suffer in loneliness. A religion that presented to us Mary with her living child in her arms and had no Mary with her dead son across her knees could not have been the religion to which we should turn in utter confidence when all else had failed. The mother of sorrow must always be nearer to the human race than even the cause of our joy." And I think that's so beautiful, and particularly with this image, this is obviously very evocative of Michelangelo's statue of the Pieta. This is also called the Pieta by Bouguereau, and it actually comes as a pair of paintings, which maybe I should have put up, but with Our Lady holding the child Jesus, and in the same kind of stance holding the crucified Jesus, and that encompassing of all parts of our life that Our Lady is present to. And I just have one last image of the Pieta as well, which is Our Lady in mourning and looking over the crucified Lord. And I just think it shows just the depths of the pain and suffering that she went through. And that so there's nothing horrible or broken or ugly that we can't bring to her, because she has already entered into all of that. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to be meditating upon this Holy Week. But for our next devotion, we may have Holy Week to look forward to next week, but we have also had a different Marian feast day in the last couple of days, which is the Annunciation of Our Lady. And within that, I want to focus on one particular aspect of it, which is Mary is the new Eve. And in the Catholic tradition, obviously, we have a huge wealth of ways of seeing all of the New Testament in light of the Old Testament. And one of the most important ways is as seeing Christ as the fulfillment of the first man, as Adam, and within that, Our Lady as the fulfillment of of Eve as the first. As the first lady in creation. And so I love this image. It's just an incredible image of the Immaculate Conception. But as you can see, Our Lady's foot is on the serpent. She has overcome the sin of Eve and the temptation of Eve. And how that relates to the Annunciation is just that moment of yes, where Eve was in the garden and tempted by the serpent and gave in. Our Lady heard the word of the angel and gave her fiat and gave her total and utter yes to to our Lord, and so allowed redemption to come into the world through her Son. And Pope Pius IX, when he was speaking about the defending the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, and he speaks of previous generations in the church, saying, hence to demonstrate the original innocence and sanctity of the Mother of God, not only did they frequently compare her to Eve, while yet a virgin, while yet innocent, while yet incorrupt, while not yet deceived by the deadly snares of the most treacherous serpent, but they have also exalted her above Eve with a wonderful variety of expressions. Eve listened to the serpent with lamentable consequences. She fell from original innocence and became his slave. The most blessed Virgin, on the contrary, ever increased her original gift, and not only never lent an ear to the serpent, but divinely given power, she had utterly destroyed the force and dominion of the evil one. And so that's why I really love this image. And then in this one, we can also see how Our Lady mirrors and then reverses some of the elements of Eve, as we can see at the top. In Latin, Eve is spelt Eva, which reverse spells Ave, the greeting that the angel Gabriel spoke to the Annunciation to Mary. And so the reversal and redemption of Eve's disobedience, which is just beautiful. And as you can see, she's surrounded by the garden with the serpent under her feet here again. And is also why in many of the images of the Annunciation, we see Our Lady in a garden, such as in this one here. I love this image. We can see her with the tree behind her. And I just love that she's staring right out at us in that moment of saying yes. So unlike Our Lady of Sorrows, this to me is more a moment of triumph, a moment of how the beauty of saying yes to God can transform and work wonders in the world. And just in some ways, to me, it's a real kind of exuberance of joy of actually coming in line with God's plan for us. And then finally, I wanted to just highlight one of my own personal favorites, which is Our Lady, Star of the Sea. It's a really ancient devotion. It comes from the 4th century. It may have actually come from a typo, but people misreading a particular word. But I don't think there's any accidents when it comes to Our Lady, and I think that this is a title that she really wants for herself. In this title, she is compared to Polaris, the guiding star, which people have used to navigate throughout history, and particularly on the seas. And naturally, she has been a devotion for people who have been traveling on the sea, who work and live on the sea or at coastal towns, people who are subject to this immense natural force and the need to have a guiding star in the middle of all of that. But I think it's also completely applicable to all of us, for we are all traveling on the sea of life. We are all thrown by the turmoil of the waves. We all need to find a way to guide us through all of the ups and downs of life. And St. Bernard of Clairvaux had a really powerful devotion to this particular title of Our Lady. And he said, "Look to the star of the sea, call upon Mary. If the winds of temptation arise, if you are driven upon the rocks of tribulation, look to the star, call upon Mary. If you are tossed upon the waves of pride, of ambition, of envy, of rivalry, look to the star, call on Mary. Should anger or avarice or fleshly desire violently assail the frail vessel of your soul, look at the star, call upon Mary. May her name never be far from your lips or far from your heart. If you follow her, you will not stray. If you pray to her, you will not despair. If you turn your thoughts to her, you will not err. If she holds you, you will not fall. If she protects you, you need not fear. If she is your guide, you will not tire. If she is gracious to you, you will surely reach your destination." And these last two images that I want to bring up here are actually images that are modern images, and you can buy them online. So just if you do like them, make sure to look for them. And I just think that they're beautiful, the blue of Our Lady's mantle and the blue of the sea. And finally, this image as well, that Our Lady cradles us in the turmoils of the world. So these are just some of my favorite devotions, and I hope that has been helpful for anyone looking to cultivate a love of Our Lady through art.
Wow, Rachel, that was remarkable. Thank you so much. Just such a multi-dimensional approach to Our Lady and the different ways we can approach her really. That for me personally, the Bouguereau one was really striking, the one that you had there at the beginning. But yeah, definitely the Star of the Sea. It's so applicable for this day and age as well, with COVID, that it's completely, the waves are there at the moment, but with her we can hold her hand, and she'll lead us across troubled waters. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And just actually to ask as well, am I right, Rachel, in saying that there is a statue of the Star of the Sea just if you go along Bull Island there in Clontarf? I'm not sure. I remember I had taken a walk there not too long ago, and I'm pretty sure there was a statue on top, just at the end of the North Bull Wall there, I think it was, that there was a statue of the Star of the Sea, Our Lady, on top of it. I'm 99% sure it was the Star of the Sea, but that's one thing I think about, imagery and statues, and, the senses of, being able to see in some way, or, an image of Our Lady. There is a power there. And I think that really was emphasized through your presentation, in the paintings and the imagery. So yeah, thanks so much for that.
Thank you. I haven't come across that statue, but I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah,
once you get to past your 5K.
5K.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Brilliant.